It is 7:42 a.m. on a cold Monday morning in New York City. The East River is quiet, but on the other side of that still water lies Rikers Island, a place where the system forgets men but remembers their mistakes. For decades, this jail complex has been called one of the toughest and most dangerous in America. What happens inside Rikers rarely makes it out unscarred. Today we tell the story of those who survived it, not through imagination, but through their own words and memories of what it means to live inside a place where every second feels like a test of endurance. When you step off the bus onto Rikers Island, the first thing that hits you is the air. It smells like metal sweat and fear. You see men lined against walls, eyes wide open, hands behind their backs. Correctional officers barking orders. The sound of keys. The sound of boots. That becomes the rhythm of your new life. James Cole remembers that first day in 1998. He was only 19 and had been arrested for armed robbery. He said walking through those gates was like stepping into another world. A world where time froze but pain never did. He was assigned to the Anna M. Cross Center, one of the main facilities on the island. Within hours, he realized Rikers was not just a jail. It was a machine that fed on anger and fear. He said the first night, he did not sleep. You could hear yelling down the tears, the clank of metal trays, someone crying, someone fighting, and somewhere in between it all, a man praying out loud for forgiveness. That was Rikers, he said, a place where violence and faith lived side by side. The cells were small, cold, and loud. The light stayed on almost all night. You never got peace. Even when you closed your eyes, you could still hear footsteps. James said you learned fast. You learn how to walk, how to talk, how to look at people without looking too long. One mistake could mean getting jumped or worse. But the system was what broke him the most. Delays, lost paperwork, missed court dates. Some men sat there for years waiting for trial without ever being convicted of a crime. He said he met people who had been locked up 2, 3, even 4 years still waiting. Some of them lost families, jobs, and sanity while waiting. One of them was Michael Reed. He was 22 when he got arrested for assault. The case was minor, but because he could not afford bail, he ended up in Rikers. He thought he would be there for a few weeks. He spent 3 years. When he got out, he said he had forgotten how to be around normal people. He could not stand silence because silence reminded him of danger. Michael said the worst thing was watching people give up. You could see it in their faces. They stopped talking, stopped hoping. Some started fights just to feel something. Others tried to take their lives. He said once he saw a man slash his wrist with a piece of glass just because he could not take another night inside. The officers rushed and sprayed gas and dragged him away. The cell was cleaned, but the smell stayed. For women, it was not better. Rikers also held women in separate buildings, but their stories carried the same pain. One woman, named Teresa, talked about how the guards treated them like they were invisible. She said sometimes the food came spoiled and medical attention was slow. One night, she said a woman went into labor, and it took hours before she was taken to a hospital. Teresa said that night changed her. She promised herself she would never return. The mental toll of Rikers was deep. Men talked to themselves. Some refused to come out of their cells. Some paced back and forth until their feet bled. A counselor who worked there said she saw inmates come in strong and leave hollow. She said Rikers does not just punish the guilty, it breaks the human spirit. By the 2000s, news began to leak out. Stories of beatings, corruption, and neglect. One of the most haunting was that of Caliph Browder. He was only 16 when he was sent to Rikers accused of stealing a backpack. He spent 3 years there without trial, 2 of those years in solitary confinement. When he finally got out, the trauma followed him. His story became a symbol of what was wrong with the system. For many who survived Rikers, freedom did not feel real. They described walking out as if stepping from darkness into blinding light. But even then, the scars remained. Some turned to advocacy, others to silence. James said after he left, he spent years trying to feel safe again. He slept with his lights on. He jumped at loud noises. He could not ride the subway without panic. He said Rikers teaches you to survive, not to live. You count days. You calculate threats. You hold your breath when doors close. But when you finally step outside, you realize you left a piece of yourself behind those bars. Today, many former inmates are speaking up. They are demanding change. They talk about better conditions, mental health support, and faster trials. Some have become motivational speakers, visiting schools and prisons to warn others about what they went through. The city has promised to close Rikers by 2027, replacing it with smaller borough jails. But for those who live there, no new building can erase what happened. They say closing Rikers will not fix the pain unless the system that created it changes too. As one former inmate said, Rikers is not just a place, it is a wound that has been bleeding for decades. And until someone stops the bleeding, the system will keep making new victims. This video took time and research to make. If you want to see more real stories from inside America's most notorious prisons, remember to support this channel. Subscribe, like, and share, because every view helps bring light to the stories that the world tried to forget. This video took days of research and hours of editing to bring these voices to you. If you believe these stories need to be heard, and if you want to help shine a light on the forgotten, remember to support this channel. Hit the subscribe button, share this video, and stay tuned for more real stories from behind America's toughest prisons. When the gates of Rikers Island finally open, the sound feels unreal. It is a heavy metal door creaking as if letting out a secret that was never meant to leave. For many inmates, freedom is not joy at first. It feels strange. The sky looks too wide. The air feels too light. People move too fast. After years of being told when to eat, when to sleep, when to breathe, the world suddenly becomes too big to handle. James Cole, the man who spent 19 years inside, said the first day out felt like waking up from a nightmare, but still hearing echoes of screams. He walked the streets of the Bronx where he grew up, and everything looked the same, yet completely different. His friends had moved on. His mother had grown old. Technology had changed the world. He held a phone in his hand and did not even know how to unlock it. He said freedom without peace is another kind of prison. Many former inmates describe life after Rikers as survival part 2. The first part was inside. The second is outside. Jobs are hard to find. People look at you like you are danger walking. Employers see the word felon and doors close. Apartments refuse to rent. Banks refuse loans. Even old friends hesitate to shake hands. The stigma never leaves. Michael Reed, the man who spent 3 years inside for an assault he never got convicted for, said he thought freedom would heal him. Instead, it exposed his wounds. He could not sleep. Every time a door slammed, he jumped. Every time a stranger stood too close, he froze. He went to therapy, but the waiting list was long. Sometimes he sat in a park for hours just trying to breathe without fear. He said the worst part was loneliness. In Rikers, you are surrounded by noise, but outside silence hurts more. He missed the only routine he knew, even though that routine had nearly destroyed him. He missed people who understood the language of survival. On the outside, nobody understood what it meant to wake up to screams, or watch people fight for food, or spend days in a cell the size of a closet. Teresa, the woman who gave birth inside, said she tried to rebuild her life, but the system did not make it easy. Her child was taken by social services after she got out. She worked 2 jobs and attended every court hearing to prove she was stable. She said society punishes you twice. Once with bars and again with judgment. When she finally got her daughter back, she cried not out of happiness, but relief. She said it felt like being human again. Many former inmates find purpose in helping others. James joined a nonprofit group that helps young men avoid incarceration. He speaks in schools telling kids about what Rikers does to the soul. He shows pictures of the tiny cells and tells them about the smell, the noise, and the silence. He said if one person listens, maybe one less life will get swallowed by that island. But some stories do not end with redemption. Some end in relapse. There are men who leave Rikers only to return months later. The streets do not forgive, and the system does not forget. Without support, without work, without therapy, they fall back into old habits. James said he has buried 3 friends who could not handle the outside world. One overdosed. Another took his life. The third was shot in a robbery gone wrong. The trauma of Rikers lingers like a shadow. Even after release, many inmates describe vivid flashbacks. The clank of metal, the smell of bleach, the sound of guards yelling all return in dreams. Psychologists call it post-incarceration syndrome. It feels like the walls of Rikers follow you everywhere. In recent years, advocacy groups have started programs to help with reentry. They offer job training, therapy, and housing. One such program called Fortune Society has helped thousands rebuild their lives after prison. James said they were the first people who treated him like a man again, not a number. He said they gave him hope that the future could still be written. But even with help, freedom costs more than anyone can imagine. Many men come home to families who have learned to live without them. Children grow up calling someone else dad. Wives move on. Mothers die while they are still inside. Reconnecting feels like learning a new language. One man said it took him 2 years before his teenage son spoke to him again. He said prison took time, but it also took trust. Teresa started speaking publicly about women in incarceration. She said the system ignores them even though their pain is just as deep. She talks about motherhood behind bars, the humiliation, the fear, the broken medical care. Her story was featured in a documentary. When asked what freedom felt like, she said it feels like carrying a wound that never closes, but learning to walk anyway. The call to close Rikers has grown louder. Activists say no amount of reform can fix a place built on punishment, not rehabilitation. They argue that the city must replace it with smaller, humane facilities focused on mental health and justice. But many fear that without deep change, history will repeat itself under new names and new buildings. James said he dreams of visiting Rikers one day, not as a prisoner, but as a witness. He said he wants to look at those gates and remember who he used to be and who he became after surviving it. He said survival is not about toughness, but about refusing to let a broken system define you. Life after Rikers is not freedom. It is a long process of learning to trust again, to live again, to breathe without fear. For many, it takes years. For some, it never happens. But each story shared, each voice recorded becomes part of a movement to change the future. And maybe that is what survival truly means. Not just walking out of the gate, but helping others find their way out too.